Hey, friends, welcome to the Dani Borow Show. And today we have a very special guest, Brad Lunz with the Lunz Group. Well, Brad, thanks so much for being with me today. It's so great to have you finally on my show. Yes. So just wanted to jump right in and so that everyone will get to know you a little bit better. So I have a few rapid fire questions. So whatever comes to mind, first answer, unfiltered, just go for it. Sound good?
Yes.
Let's do it. Oh. Okay. What's your favorite book?
So favorite book, like genre. I honestly hate the favorite questions because then it's like, where does it sit? Because to have one above everything else. So favorite that I've read recently. So I'm gonna give that caveat. Oh, what was a really good one? Because I read through so much.
It's hard to pick one. It's a hard question.
I'm into super trashy sci-fi.
Really?
Yes, Scorpion. So it's yeah.
That's a big surprise. Super trashy sci-fi.
Yeah, like you just consume it. Yeah.
Okay. Are you an iPhone or Android person?
Android.
Android, look at you. Sketchpad or computer?
Sketchpad.
Sketchpad, old school.
Yes.
Very nice. What's your favorite food?
Ooh, in the cold weather, I could do a good like. Yeah,
You're thinking comfort food. I can look at you. You're like.
There really isn't a food I don't like.
Oh, really? You're a good eater.
Yes. I mean, I have to maintain, but yes.
Oh gosh, yes. Well, you can't think of a favorite? Top 3.
So, my favorite food delivery system is a taco.
Okay.
It's much better than a sandwich because you don't get it oozing out the sides.
Right.
You can really get a group there. I like my go-to meals at home. I would say, I don't know. It's like a chicken and yellow rice.
Okay.
Like super easy.
Basic.
Yes. But been diving into some lentils lately.
Some what?
Lentil.
Okay.
So getting a little more
Healthy grains.
Healthy grains, but I'll take a ribeye.
You're like, you got there. Very
yeah, like
good.
if I was to pick a last meal, that's maybe a better one. Give me a nice medium rare cowboy ribeye.
Good stuff. Yes. What's your dream vacation?
One I don't have to pay for.
Okay.
Like I've got there's so much. I love to travel.
You travel a lot, right?
I do. I have.
Where have you been to lately that you really like, wow, this is so nice, mind-blowing?
I've been doing London for work a lot lately.
Okay.
And that has grown on me quite a bit. I'm excited this fall. I'm going to Edinburgh and excited to go up there and go to Scotland. That would be amazing. I've traveled a lot in Asia.
Okay.
So Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, China pre-Olympics, which was intriguing, and post-Olympics.
Yes.
Would really love to do 2 weeks in Japan.
Japan. Nice. Very nice. What's a fun fact most people don't know about you?
If I say it, then everyone will know.
Okay.
Like that's an interesting question because like how exposed do I go?
I don't know. It's up to you.
Yeah, I don't know.
What's something fun that you like to do that people don't know?
Well, I think it's fun. I enjoy doing puzzles. Like
I love puzzles
I am
too.
set for Old Man Sunday. Like I will watch my 60 minutes. I will do a crossword puzzle and I'll do puzzles.
Yes, I love puzzles too. I think people don't appreciate how fun they are.
Yes.
Yes, they're awesome. Yes, if you're not an architect, what would you be?
A storyteller.
Wonderful. What's your favorite city for architecture?
I really like Copenhagen.
Copenhagen.
Yes.
Very nice. Why?
The way the streets were done, the blend of contemporary with old, the balance of what I believe it was King Christian the 16th did to give it the canals like Venice.
Wow.
So like Amsterdam, Venice, bringing that in, and just the way it's just the vibrancy of the city.
Wow. Wonderful. Very good to know. Least favorite building in the world? What's the ugliest building to you in the world? You know that there's some eyesores out there.
Yeah, like the one on I-4, which
What's the one on I-4?
the building that never got finished, but got finished right over near Maitland. It was called the eyesore on I-4. I think it had its own
Okay.
IG account for a while. I don't know. They all have merit. So it's difficult because
Yes.
the building isn't the architects.
Right.
The building is the clients.
Correct. Yes.
So we help take what a client's vision is and turn it into reality, and give that physical manifestation of what their dreams are. And for me to say something is ugly or to say something isn't good is really to dismiss what someone else's dreams are. And I
What a
wouldn't
good
want that
point.
same thing applied to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So all dreams are valid. And while it might not be something that I care for, I don't want to give it the...
Right. You're still delivering what the client wants.
Right. I don't want to call someone else's work ugly because I don't think I would enjoy my work being called ugly.
Okay. I'm not that nice, but I'll take that.
Fair. I mean, had we done the drinking beforehand, it might be a little more unfiltered.
Yes. What is the most unusual client request that you received? Like, was there somebody who wanted something really off the wall and different, weird, never seen before?
I don't know if we've had anything really super strange. We've had some misalignments of what could actually be put into space. Some dreams are too big to go into the package they want to put it in. I've had a lot of requests that try to defy gravity,
Okay.
which we cannot accomplish. That is sort of a constant.
Like some things that are like,
Yeah,
it's
it's
not
like-
physically possible
Right,
yet.
right.
Yes.
Typically, the most absurd things are when budget and dream don't align. That's the
Yes.
hardest. I've had some private residents where they've had very specific requests, but respecting the privacy of that, I don't want to.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that's a difficult one because
It is,
you're a
yes,
confidant. As you go through it, you build a high level of trust with your clients.
Absolutely.
And the discretion
Yes.
is extremely important.
Yes, but the gravity defying is always
Gravity
very
defiance and budget
challenging.
yeah, it's
I remember my days as a pastry chef, and people wanted the cakes hanging from the ceiling. Have you seen those?
oh yeah, where you
And I'm like, why? But yes,
well, how do you cut it? Because it's like a pendulum. Like
it's really funny, but it's basically the same thing. It's just a doweling structure that holds it. It's interesting. What's your favorite architectural style? Do you have one?
I love the craftsmanship within Art Nouveau. If you look sort of that from the late 1800s to through the early 1900s, Italian futurism's intriguing. Like there's so many pieces that are just like, while the intention behind Italian futurism is like the political message was not a positive one, the forms and the geometry are really nice. Art Nouveau, Art Deco, and that dialogue of styles and the discussions. I think what draws me more to it is the philosophy behind it and understanding that it's more than just an aesthetic that's applied, but there's an intention behind it. So I gravitate back to that Art Nouveau. Then you get into kind of the Glasgow school as well with Charles Rene Mackintosh, and then the incorporation of furniture, and then just that holistic design so that you give a space meaning.
Very nice. What is the biggest misconception about architects that people have?
The stereotype's intriguing, right? It's
So I feel like every job kind of has a stereotype. What
Well,
is the one for architects that people think that it is and it's really not?
well, the portrayal of architects on television has been an intriguing one because, I mean, the Brady Bunch, the guy had one bathroom for the kids, and it's like that the competency always caused a question. It's just it's from architecture. Architects are there isn't a singularity to them because we cover it. You have a high science component, you have a high art component, and there's a sort of a gradient between, and then you apply is someone an introvert, someone more of an extrovert. So where do they sit? There's a lot of client management, a lot of engineer management, consultant management, but then there's also the ideation and the creation. So how do all those, everyone thinks that we sit just in the design side, but there's an amazing amount of business and communication component that goes with our job.
Very interesting. And what's the best advice somebody has given you?
There's been so much.
So much good stuff.
Yeah, it's and you start to just layer it inside, and it becomes so part of you. You forget kind of the origin story of where that advice came from. Act with intention, not for outcome.
Act with intention, not for the outcome.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Control your intentions. Don't try to control the outcome.
It's almost impossible to control the outcome, right?
Yeah. When you start to shift and you start to try to control that outcome, then you often compromise what you're trying to accomplish, which is that intention. If you lead in and you maintain something around that intention, that outcome can manifest itself in a way that you didn't understand could be a possibility. And you end up with a very strong win-win-win scenario because that intention is what you're trying to accomplish.
Right. Yes.
What's the point of going through an ideation phase or any sort of journey if the outcome is what you're trying to control?
Right. Right. It's what I've heard this recently too. It's like, don't pick the goal for what you want, but who you want to become in the process of achieving that goal. So
Yeah.
it sounds like what you're saying. Yeah. Would love to hear more about the Lunz Group and how that started. You've been in business for almost 40 years.
Correct.
So tell us about who you guys are, what do you do, and you know, how you got started.
So my father founded the company in 1987. So he came from a partnership prior, opened it, and then so he had been practicing for a number of years. My life journey, I did not want to, like most architects are like, I want to be an architect, and that's their goal. I went through a very varied journey to get to architecture.
Okay. Because you've had other jobs before you did this.
I
right?
have. I went to school, started, I didn't know what I wanted to do after high school. I mean, I had a lot of capabilities, but I didn't have a direction.
Okay.
So a listless ship, and oftentimes without a direction, you don't have that motivation. So my time at Georgia Tech was not successful. And so I reset myself, and I worked as an electrician for a while. I did, I went through like this idea of like just wanting to find myself. And so I did like a 7-Eleven clerk for a minute. I worked
7-Eleven?
Yeah, because I'm like, I want to see the hardship of life. And it's like, you're in your early 20s. You're not, I worked at Barnes & Noble for a while, back when that was a thing. I did a lot of food service. And then I was just taking these random classes, trying to understand things. So it was, taking accounting classes or taking a photography class. And so I spent 2 years doing that. Took a job in an office doing accounts receivable just to pay some bills. Ended up doing data warehousing out of it, like just from accounts receivable to accounts payable, moving up, doing some finance management very quickly. And then got stuck into the IT role and started doing, writing SQL statements to do data warehousing. And I'm like, okay, what do I want to do? And I'm like, I'm going to go to architecture school. So I was like, as you're thinking through, because I was working for a property management company at the time. And I'm like, this is the varied systems within a building were really intriguing. You have an overlay of so many different things, and it's a complex problem. And architects aren't really problem solvers, they're problem seekers. So the difference between an engineer and an architect is an engineer is solving an equation. Whatever that equation is, they're going to find the most effective way to get to that equation. An architect's job is to define what those variables are. Because you have a series of equations that are overlaid on top of each other. So you have electrical, mechanical, structural, you have the client's needs, you have the aesthetic component. So what we're doing is we're weighing what those variables are and the importance. So how you site a building, how you pick the building systems, because you're looking at your height to height. So a structural engineer is really focused on the structure. I'm going to design the structure most effectively. Oftentimes they're so tunneled they forget, and rightfully so, because that's what their job is, that we've got a mechanical plenum that needs to run, or we've got ducts that are running, and we've got electrical. So how do we layer in all of that? Our role is to determine how those pieces lay out and then guide that process and ensure that space is maintained.
I never thought of it that way. Very interesting. So, so you're a second generation architect, correct?
Yeah. So getting back to the question, I'm sorry we got off a little bit.
Yes.
So I after graduation did not have a desire to come back to Lakeland. Like it was not most architects, they think of an urbanized area. They want to, you're out of school. It's like, I want to go somewhere like New York or Chicago.
And you're from Lakeland, right?
I am from Lakeland.
You're a Lakelander. Nice.
Yes.
Very nice.
Well, born in Bartow, raised in Lakeland.
Born in Bartow. Wonderful.
So and was practicing for a while. I was in Tampa prior to Lakeland, and I was equity track in a 110 person firm. So I was going up. 2008 was coming around. We were doing a lot of multifamily, mid-rise, high-rise residential. And as the clients are coming in and we're developing this, the cost that they were selling it for, while it was marketed for who I was at the time, like it was toward like, oh, it's, someone that's, making this income, it wasn't accessible. And you could start to see that bubble forming. And
2008 was an interesting year.
Yeah, so 07 was coming around. We had a lot of stuff on the plate. You're designing all of that, and it was a lot of downtown Tampa, a lot of downtown Orlando stuff, and you could just see that the real estate was trading so much on a pre-construction level that who they wanted to live in there and who it was designed for was not going to be able to financially meet it. And so I ended up in a conversation with my father. He had built a portfolio that was very diverse. It was balanced with higher education, government. So it wasn't as strong in a multifamily play. So I asked him, what is your exit strategy? What is your transition plan? And then talked with him, and he had two partners at the time, minor partners. So the four of us talked. I came on board and started in 2008.
And you're involved with you own a couple other businesses.
I do.
So tell us about them. I know I was hearing you talk about the apiary earlier today, and that sounds like such a fascinating company.
So through the process, our growth is both organic and acquisition.
Okay.
So I've done a couple of acquisitions. The most recent one, acquisition merger, was WMB. So Steve and Mike had a practice, and we realized that actually the building we're sitting in is what drove us to do that transaction.
Okay.
Because we ended up working collaboratively, we started to understand that 1 + 1 does not equal 2, but 1 + 1 could equal 3 or 4. So that force multiplier of the scaling. We had processes they didn't have. and they had processes we didn't have, but if we coupled them together, we could really scale well. So with that acquisition merger came a program management company, and that program management company, so it's specializes in aerospace. So specifically that market share, doing building event stand-ups, some supply chain logistics for construction, service clients, Blue Origin, Lockheed, Carbon. So,
And that's a segment that's been growing here in Lakeland.
it has. None of that team is here in Lakeland.
Okay.
So none of that. Our team has been all over from Kent, Washington to Atlanta, Huntsville, and the Space Coast.
Right. Because you're known for a lot of your local projects here, but your firm is actually at a national level.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're in multiple cities throughout
Yes.
the nations.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I currently carry a Virginia, North Carolina, New York, Georgia, Alabama, Texas, and Florida license. We have a project that's potential in Arkansas, so waiting. We've been asked if we were interested, and the laws are very interesting because I can't offer services until I'm licensed in that state. So I'm pending approval in that before I can get into discussions. I've got an application in for the U.S. Virgin Islands for
Oh my
licensure there.
goodness. That's a good place to work
Yes.
at. Yes.
Yes.
Very intentional. So you were going to tell me about the apiary.
So the apiary, so when we look at it, architecture, in 2019, we were awarded Peppa Pig. So we
Yes.
we have a themed entertainment vertical. That's one of our markets. So, and that came through the WMB transaction, was they had a portfolio there. So
And for the people who don't know, Peppa Pig is an attraction over at Legoland.
Yeah, it's
its own little theme park.
It's a half-day theme park, complements Legoland. We had a very long history with Merlin Entertainments, who owns Legoland, and so we ended up winning that contract. So that was fall of 2019. So we were in the middle of, I think it was a little earlier than that. We were working through, and a lot of what you have to do is you're overlaying an intellectual property, Peppa Pig. There's very specific colors, there are very specific shapes. You're trying to do brand management and layer that on. So that required heavy visualization. So we were utilizing real-time rendering at that time with Unreal Engine and coming in so that the board could start to see what does it look like. Then the contractor could start to see what the pricing would be at an earlier stage instead of going through all the ride acquisition, and we could start to do that. So that visualization started to open up my eyes in terms of what we could do, because what we started to move from was just placemaking to storytelling. So architecture is placemaking, and places are the sets for stories. So what are you doing from a themed entertainment? You're telling a story. You're giving an experience. So the apiary then became this test kitchen, if you will, of what can we do? So it was a lot of horizontal thinking. We've gone up and down on a variety of things. It was like just trying different, do we have in-house staff? Do we do contract work for hire? So as we're doing Peppa, 2020, Asian markets start declining in February. Merlin Entertainments pulls back. If you can imagine what a theme park would be to a top line of a company, honestly scared the shit out of me.
So that was completed in 2020, right before COVID, or?
2020, we were just in schematic.
Okay.
So the balance of my 2020 revenue, like if I look at a percentage, I want to say 30% of my revenue for the year was going to be the production of those drawings. And they pull the plug. They stop it. I don't know what to do. You have like the bottom falls out of what all these best laid plans, because I'm trying to control outcome, right?
Right.
So I'm looking at outcome. That shifted into what are our intentions? So what are we going to do? So defining that, I mean, that's been 5 years now. So 5 years ago was asking ourselves, and really, I say ourselves, asking myself, what do I want to become? What are we trying to do? And so a couple of major pieces. We're not going to lose staff. We're going to figure out every way possible so everyone has safety and security. So let's give that baseline. Let's give flexibility to understand what's happening with this. During that process, it was daily communications from me, very, very exposed in terms of the uncertainty and vulnerable, and saying that, hey, you know as much as me on this, but what I know and what I can control is our intention to do this. So providing that baseline and really built into our last three core values, which are sustainability, accountability, and resilience. So tying all that together, and so the apiary was moving through and born sort of out of that, because I was watching some of the stuff my daughter was consuming on media, and I grew up with electric company. I learned to read from an electric company. And then realizing how much that show framed my worldview is absolutely amazing. So what are the impacts of what we're digesting and consuming from a media perspective? So I said, well, let's go. Let's try to figure this out. I mean, a lot of like, let's go, and back and forth, and it's like this. It didn't start taking till about last year. So understanding it as growing pains. I felt like I was a 9-year-old, 12-year-old boy again, where I'm growing and my pants fit yesterday, but they don't fit today. And it's like you're going through these growth, and it's more the piece of where you're going. So we took and then started to develop this content. So it was originally children's content. So we're looking at animated series. We were seeing deficits in socio-emotional learning. We were looking at trying to bring in strong themes of sustainability. We were trying to do, I've got a 12-year-old daughter, so wanted to make sure there's this whole thing, if you can see it, you can be it. So placing, not just giving a perspective of what could happen. So then it came down to, I'm sitting here shooting a shotgun across, and it's like, no, I need to be a little more narrow. So really get back to what is that intention. That intention was then understanding who I really am. That piece is fostering genuine curiosity in ourselves and the world around us. That requires an acceptance and a candor of yourself as much as it does to receive that information. So to understand Dani, I have to be open with myself and be able to take that. So we started to look and say, okay, does it fit this bucket? If it doesn't fit this bucket, and it's got to be fun, it's got to be entertainment, it can't be curriculum forward. So there's one piece that we're looking at, that one of the IPs, which is really dealing with the consumer product component and building out that franchise wheel that builds into those with low latent inhibition or sensory. So within the autism spectrum, and understanding those needs, and it's that feeling of community and that outside world. So we've got one program that deals with that, but it doesn't, and it's fostering functional independence. And I shouldn't say dealing with it, because it's not. It's learning to live unmasked from the get-go, so that you can prevent that autistic burnout. Because within that journey of everything that's happened, one of the things that I found out about myself is that I'm high-functioning autistic. And it's like, you look back and it's like, oh, that makes sense. So what am I doing to embrace who I really am?
How did you first react to that diagnostic? Like finding out that you have autism at a later age, right? That you found out. Was it weird? Was like, oh, you said it makes sense.
Well, it's you don't have autism.
Okay.
You are autistic.
You are correct. Yes.
It's an operating system. To have it puts it into a position with it's not something you treat. It's the difference between an iPhone and an Android.
Right. Yes.
So it's what are you doing to work within your operating system? And there's beauty in everything, right? So understanding what makes that mind sing. And all of us have it, have a difference of mental maps, right?
Right.
So to answer your question, I really didn't know how to feel. I didn't know what am I supposed to feel? And so I'm asking myself, what am I supposed to feel? I don't know. So then you go through, and I'm trying to program myself like, okay, what am I supposed to feel? It's like, and at the end of the day, I didn't really feel anything.
Right. It's still you.
Like I'm like, okay, so that's a term. So you've defined my operating system.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah. I love that because I think that there is a little bit of ignorance maybe or misconceptions about autism and it shows itself differently for each person. So I wanted to ask you about some of your projects here in town.
Oh, please.
So we are here at the Catapult building. This is one of yours, right?
It's actually one of the last ones that I had a hand into the design of.
Okay.
And that's been one of the harder parts is
because this one had some challenges, right? Because it was there was a hurricane and
oh my gosh.
Tell us about that. Refresh my memory because I remember that there was quite a bit of drama surrounding the construction of this building.
So the old Cash and Feed building was an amazing building, right? So
I remember it, yeah.
And then it was Irma. There was this massive wind event that pushed up gosh, I'm going to get the wall wrong, and then Steve Scruggs is going to see this, and he's going to call me and correct me. So, Steve, you're right. Pushed in. We ended up with buckling of the joists that were going across, but it was not economically viable to go ahead because we'd have to redo the whole structure. At which point we were already dealing with the diminished floor height. We weren't getting really what this facility could become. So then it had to pivot and said, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? So designing a building that allowed for an homage to the old building while simultaneously creating a contemporary space that can foster the innovation and the incubation of ideas. And the original idea we had was like, what if you took a beehive and you put a stick in it and you kind of looked? So that was like the glass coming in, but it moved a little bit, but
yes.
It was an interesting structure on how that came in. And the Catapult group, Wesley and Steve, were very, they pushed a lot of boundaries in a positive way. They wanted to make sure they understood, they had this idea. And this was, the idea to do an incubation and to foster and to grow our community through small business needs and letting entrepreneurs learn to become entrepreneurs in the basement of the nation or the old Bank of America building, and then realizing the strength of doing that and the asset that this can become for the community was something that's absolutely admirable. So like to be the person to help facilitate that was.
This is an incredible building. Like when I took the tour for the first time, I was just so impressed at how much is in here, how many different things are in here. And coming up with all those details, it had to be challenging, right? Or is it something that kind of started one way and changed 1,000 times and it evolved because they're like, oh, we're forgetting this, we're forgetting that?
It wasn't a forgetting this. It was the leadership here wanted to keep adding. Okay. And adding because they saw like how how much this can be a resource. So it was almost like putting everything in, and then you've got to pare it down a little bit to get to the essence of what it is. The building is nothing without the people within it. The building, while it's a wonderful building, the real power of the building are all the individuals sitting at the desks. And Catapult was meant to be that, where it can have a sense of community. You have the large space, but you have the private offices. You have the resources that larger businesses may have that small businesses can have access to go ahead and further them quicker.
Now, the Summit building across the street, when
Yes.
that one was, going up, at the time I had a Facebook group that I would ask questions about the community and everything. So that one seemed to have quite a bit of negative comments about it. Like it was too big, it was blocking the view of the lake and everything. Do you feel like with that one you accomplished what you guys are looking to design or your client's vision?
I mean, Summit is a homegrown company. Density is a conversation that people think is a four-letter word, but that is downtown.
Right.
Blocking the view from Massachusetts from a road and a car, we wanted to make sure we preserved the promenade and how that came through.
Right.
And what we really looked at then too is that promenade has the ability to actually become an overpass over the railroad to connect back to behind the police station.
Because it was
So
just
there-
a vacant lot, right? A parking lot for a while?
For a while, it used to be a fire station.
Okay.
So there was a building, there was a Moose Lodge. There's historically there has been buildings there.
Okay.
That was one that creating that street front does help, and then you've got some nice little pocket benches that sit there along Massachusetts that soften it up and give it a more urbanized feel. When we look at the urban fabric, we've got to look at it like a smile. If a lot is vacant, it feels like a missing tooth.
Right, right.
Ask yourself, why is it easier to walk down Kentucky Avenue from Lemon to Maine than it is to walk down Tennessee?
Why is that?
You've got a contiguous overhang. You've got a series of businesses. So it spatially feels shorter. Whereas when you walk down Tennessee, depending on what side of the street, because you've got a parking lot on one side, then you've got the Wells Fargo building, and then you've got another parking lot. So it feels your rhythm is off. Then you look on the other side, and it's a little faster because you've got the old post office. Then you have a parking lot. Then you have a building. Then you have an alley. So it's a rhythm.
Interesting. Yeah, it's one of those things that you don't think about it, but we all feel it. Like I said, it feels.
And Kentucky has the shade. So when you look at urbanized context like that, you want to have contiguous street front. And that's been the CRA, the LDDA, and the city of Lakeland have been striving to create a walkable area, walkable downtown. So it's a slow process.
And we're also seeing more apartments here in the downtown area. And I think overall throughout Polk County. Do you think that there is a growing need for those types of residential dwellings that are multi-unit? Is there a growing need for that?
Well, we have to ask ourselves. I mean, Polk County is, depending on the day of the week, we're number one county in the world or in the country for growth, and we're number two or number three. But either way,
we're getting crazy relocations.
So
here.
how are we dealing with it? And densification, the access to housing is so important.
Yes.
What are we doing to preserve the natural areas that need the recharge into the aquifer? What are we doing to maintain lifestyles? What are we doing on a traffic side? That trip generation, the further we sprawl out, the more that aggregate stacks. Densification downtown is absolutely appropriate. I think Jason Lewis did a fantastic job with his project on Orange, right across from the park. I mean, it was one of our projects that we worked on, but I think his vision, and again, it goes to what the client's vision is, and how he did something really sensitive with those garden apartments. Then Broadway did the same thing right there on Lime Street.
Right.
The difficult part is the cost of capital right now and the margins on multifamily are so, the cost of capital is high, margins are thin. So in a secondary market like Polk County, you're paying the same construction cost, but not getting the same rent as Tampa or other parts of Hillsborough. So it's a struggle. And the center part of the state has that struggle. And same thing with, we see this with one of our other practice areas is public safety. We do a tremendous amount of fire stations, sheriff work, police, and then just overall municipality work. So
Right.
public.
You do a lot of those, right?
Yes, I think we've got like 20 active fire stations in
Wow.
design or construction.
Yes. What other projects have you guys been involved with that, you're proud of?
So my favorite, and
What's your
I do have a favorite.
You have a favorite.
So Gene Conrad was airport director, and he had the opportunity. There was an RFQ out, or a request for lease proposal. The NOAA Hurricane Hunters, the Aircraft Operations Center, so it's just not the Hurricane Hunters, it's all of their aircraft operations. So the light aircraft, the heavies, were getting kicked off of MacDill because there was a new refueling wing coming in and they were going to take over their hangar. So they put out a request for lease proposal, and it had to be within 50 miles of where they're at so the certain airports could respond. Gene's like, you do these to procure work. Can you help me? I said, yes. So we went through, and he had 2 bays. It's the old Piper manufacturing facility that's out there. Draken's in there. And then he had, I can't remember who it was. There was like 3 bays. The end bay was occupied with a company that did jet interiors. So
Okay.
a lot of customization. So he had 2 bays that we could put in there. They had a whole set of criteria. So we had to do drawings. We had to follow all of the GSA guidelines. I mean, it was lab space, radar space, fabrication space, office space, plus then the hangar. And then they had mobility requirements that you had to make you could only move 2 planes to get to any of the 9 aircraft. When we figured it out, in this bowling lane kind of configuration, so you had these 2, so only had 1 door out here, met the criteria, but didn't meet the intention. Because we'd get that, they'd stay there for 5 years because they'd have to sign a lease, because they have to stay within there. And then what would happen at a national level, because we had, what happened was we had the XO and the CO come visit, and you could read them, and they weren't thrilled with it, but they knew this was the solution they were going to end up with because it was going to be price driven. So Clearwater was having issues because they're in a floodplain, so they closed. Tampa, I don't think it met their growth strategy per se, so they knew they were going to more than likely end up at Lakeland due to cost. But then it would be released back at a federal level, and it may never be in Florida again. So I want to say it was a week before, and we did this 395-page document. It's like,
Oh,
this
fun.
big. I called Gene up. I'm like, Gene, we need to talk. We ended up switching and saying, can we move this person at the end, do a full redesign within a week, just redesign that schematic, hit it, came back. The XO and the CO were like, did you give us the right building? This meets everything we want. So they stayed. They kept that project, or they've now stayed there and since done an expansion. We ended up designing and building it. So Colgard with Register Construction came on board Thanksgiving. From Thanksgiving to June 1st, we designed and built 80,000 square feet of hangar
Dang.
and 100,000 square feet of office.
Wow.
I mean, Herculean. It was amazing. So my favorite, yes. And I love what they do. They're like a
That's
geeky biker
wonderful.
gang, like
Yes.
geeky scientists, but with
Yes.
adrenaline. So as a native Lakelander, I came back because I knew the city.
Okay.
Why did you come here?
Why did I come here?
Yeah, what drew you here?
Oh, great question. At the time, my son was just 1 year old, and I had relocated. I'm originally from Brazil, lived in Maryland, and then I couldn't stand that weather, came to Florida. And then when I had a baby, I realized that the Orlando area where I was living in, it was just too much for raising a kid. And we came across Lakeland, and it just had that wonderful small town vibe, but it had everything you could absolutely imagine. Everything is here, but it's not crazy. It's not 6 million cars and tourists and crazy drivers. So I really fell in love with the atmosphere of Lakeland. And then after I moved here, I just fell in love with the people. The people here are just so warm, and it has I have a sense of family here. Not having any family in the country, I feel like I belong here, and I've been just so welcomed warmly by so many people here. So I love Lakeland. I've lived in so many different cities all over the world, and this is my favorite. So I don't want to move. So yes, I can see why you came back.
It's but that different. Our frame of reference is always interesting because it's positive to hear the perspective of someone that's never seen the city, because oftentimes we've got to be reminded because we were so used to it.
Right. Yes, and someone who has that first impression as an adult as opposed to growing up here and that's all you know.
So you have an interesting background as well, because when I first met you, you were baking.
I was. Yes. It's been a big change of heart. And it's funny because I'm a second generation realtor. So just like yourself, you're a second generation architect. So I went on this giant loop-de-loo. I got 3 college degrees only to sell houses in the end. That's what we do. But it's been so positive for me. I did real estate in Brazil for 10 years, just helping my parents with the brokerage firm, but never thought of it as a career. It was just me helping my parents. And did everything, property management, open houses, new construction, all that stuff. But I never once thought of myself as a real estate agent. So it's funny that after I became much older and had a child, I started to really appreciate what the profession really is all about. And it's got very little to do with sales, almost nothing to do with sales. It's really understanding people's needs and concerns and caring for them an awful lot, and having a lot of knowledge about the process, the market, all the moving parts. There's a lot that goes on into a real estate transaction. To this day, as long as I've been doing this, I still think it's a miracle when something closes. It's like so many things that need to happen. So it's been really great. Now, one thing that I think you and I have in common is our involvement with the community. I know that you have a big heart for the community. I am now president of my Rotary Club, and it has allowed me to touch a lot of different facets that I didn't have access to before. But you've been involved with so much more here in town. You were involved with the symphony orchestra for a while and some other things. Are you on any boards right now?
It's cultivating communities is the vision of our organization. So
Yes.
like you, we just want to remove the rocks so someone else can plow the field to make it easier. Currently, I sit on the All Saints Academy's Board of Trustees.
Oh, wonderful.
So that is one. And then I served on LVIM as a board member, and now I serve on their advisory board. And I look at it as healthcare is something, and the mission of what LVIM does. And when Bobby was there and now Alice, I want them to be out of work because that means the healthcare needs have been met. But what they do now, just absolutely amazing, and what a resource to the community they are. Other areas, it's serving in different capacities where you can. I also serve on the CFDC board of directors.
Okay.
On the
You're
board.
a busy guy, Brad.
I'm just So really working on how to make our community better, and then since my daughter's at school, it's
Yes.
what can I do to be a good steward there?
Absolutely. And what are some of your predictions for the future of Polk County from an architectural standpoint? Do you think that we're going to see a lot of new things coming our way? Are we going to try and stay small town vibe? What do you think is going to happen?
I think it's how we approach it. Change is inevitable,
Yes.
but we can guide the change in the direction to meet the intentions of what we want. We can keep that sense of community. And it's interesting because when I came back, this city is a lot different than the city I was when I grew up, but it hasn't lost the essence of what it is.
That's so true.
And while we continue to grow and we continue to add to our community, it only enriches us further. And let's just make sure we maintain and present ourselves with those values that we are. There's a lot coming. We're seeing so much growth. There's a lot of changes, a lot of innovative ideas and companies that are being born here or being brought here. And that's nothing but great for our city.
Wonderful. So as a final question,
Yes.
what's next for Brad and the Lunz Group?
Not the same old, same old. We are continuing to grow. My focus internally right now is to create the next generation of leaders within the organization, to grow the talent we have, and to continue to not just serve this market that everyone thinks we're in Lakeland, but we have expansion plans going forward.
Fantastic. Congratulations. Well, thank you so much for being with me today and for sharing so much about our community. This has been so awesome.
Thanks, Dani.
Thank you.